Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and this is episode 252, where we're going to be talking about going full-time dev. Now, if there's one common dream that most indie devs share, it's probably to be able to make indie games full-time. But with such a goal, there lies great challenges, and to overcome them may seem like a daunting task. Thankfully, Thomas Brush of Atmos Games shares his journey and experience on how he achieved this very goal while providing insight and tips on how to gain the confidence and freedom that every indie dev is looking for. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Thomas Brush. Thomas, how's it going, man?
It's going really, really well. It's been a really busy week. I'm working on my next game. It's called Father. People can wishlist it. I'm already plugging my product. I just realized, oh man, no, they can wishlist it on Steam. So I'm working on my next game, Father, and it's been so busy because I'm trying this new thing where I live stream the creation of my next commercial release. You know, we're going to launch on Steam, Xbox, PS4, and maybe mobile. And I want to live stream the whole thing from start to finish on YouTube. So I'm just like, I'm really burnt out right now, but like in a good way. Like I'm having a good time. So that's kind of how I'm doing right now.
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, a lot going on, and as you can tell, because these things are really top of mind for you, and rightfully so, right? But let's take a step back, though, because I'd love for you to introduce yourself to everybody, especially of those who, if they're not familiar with you, like, who are you, Thomas? What have you done? What kind of games have you worked on? And outside of that, what do you do in your spare time, when you have spare time? Fun things you like to do?
Yeah, so I'm a solo, well, not solo. I used to say I'm a solo indie game developer, and I've been doing this since I was 16. Now I'm 30, so I guess I've been making games for about 15 years. And I used to call myself a solo game developer because, you know, you don't have any money, but you want to follow that dream of making a game. But I'm kind of a what's the word? I'm a lone wolf type guy. I don't like being told what to do. And so what my big thing was, I'm going to make a game no matter what. So I don't need funding. I'm just going to do it. And I don't need a team. I don't need to go work for AAA. So, you know, for the last 15 years, I've sort of pursued making games solo, working my butt off. And, you know, I'm like a traditional kind of guy. So I've got a wife, I've got kids, I've got bills to pay. You know, we were talking earlier before we started recording. I live in the middle of nowhere, basically. I mean, I live in South Carolina. And I'm a normal dude. But for some reason deep down, I just felt like, no, you know, I'm going to make video games and I'm going to tell my stories in my way. And so I was a solo dev for a long time. I spent 5 years working on a game called Pinstripe. That was way too long. You know, side note, you should never spend 5 years on a game. I made a lot of mistakes. But I was doing that part-time, so I was working a desk job and I was trying to support my wife while she was going through college, and then a kid was on the way. So it's just like, you know, a normal American life. But at the same time, there was another part of me that was like, yeah, but I want to make video games and do it solo. So I did that, and I finally released Pinstripe, got a publisher, secured $100,000 from Kickstarter. Then I did it again with a game called Neversong. It used to be called Once Upon a Coma, and then we changed the name to Neversong. And then things just blew up from there. Like Apple was really interested in the game, so we worked with Apple. I got a publisher for it. That game was also kickstarted for around $96,000. That's including some post funds raised during a post campaign after Kickstarter. So point being, because of that drive of wanting to be in charge of my games and not have a studio tell me what to do or not work for a AAA company, and nothing against AAA, it's just, in my case, I'm I'm wired to want to do things my way. Because of that drive, I kind of had to go from being this pretentious, artsy solo dev to, I guess, becoming an entrepreneur,
Yeah.
and scrambling to find funding and money. And it was difficult. And so that's my life on the entrepreneurial side, is going from an artsy fartsy guy to becoming a business owner, and figuring it out all on my own.
Nice.
And so yeah, so now I'm working on a game called Father. It's a 3D game. It's like a classic FPS, late 90s Half-Life-esque game.
Oh, sweet.
Because yeah, that kind of runs through my blood.
Yeah.
Those kind of games, just that crispy, pixelated, crunchy feel. The character models look very strange and bizarre just because they had very little resources to work with. I love those kind of games, so that's what I'm working on right now.
Sweet.
As far as just generally my life, I'm a dad. Like I said, I'm a dad. I've got 2 kids, 30 years old, and I'm a big proponent of, I like normal life. I want to live a normal life. I don't want to have to move to some crazy big city. I don't want to be stuck in traffic. I don't want to be paying $3,000 in rent. I want to live a normal life. I want to see green trees outside my window. And so I guess the conclusion of this rant here is, and I guess it's just because I've been thinking about this a long time. I want to be an artist, and I want to be in control of what I make. But I also want a normal life, and it's possible to do both, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I think it makes complete sense, at least from my perspective. But we're going to get into that a little bit more in a moment too. And it's a good point, and it's definitely something that we're going to dig into further in a moment. But before we do that, and thank you, by the way, for sharing all that, because it's like, again, it showcases how I think Thomas is really thinking. He's really in that zone that has that huge drive with everything he's been doing this week, and I think it's bubbling up here a little bit too, which is awesome. I love the passion.
It is. It is, dude. It is. It's funny, maybe this is too much, but I just went to the doctor yesterday because my left hand is going numb.
Oh no.
My lips are tingly. My nose is tingly. And I was actually live streaming, and this started happening. So I go to the doctor, and my doctor's like, "Dude, you've got anxiety." And I said, "But I'm not scared." And he goes, "That's not what anxiety is. Anxiety is when you're constantly going and you don't stop." And I think I've had to just become, that's sort of my predisposition for the last 10 years, which is like, because I want that normal life.
Yeah.
Because I want to live in a very remote location, and I want to have a family and just live a normal life. Because I want that, it means that I have to compress all of my creative energy into like a normal 8-hour day.
Yeah.
And bear all of the load of what you would typically offload to people who are working for you in like LA or Seattle or Austin, Texas or New York City. But for me, it's like all compressed down onto me because I'm kind of like on an island in a way.
Yeah.
So, so all that said, it is boiling to a head during this podcast.
Yeah.
Which maybe it's serendipitous for you, because hopefully it's good content for you. But I'm trying to get a hold of that generalized anxiety of like always trying to do everything.
Yeah.
And so we could talk about that more. We could talk about how I'm trying to offload a lot more these days onto other people who can help me. So that's maybe something we could talk about. I don't know.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you brought it up too, anyways, because in general, I feel you. Like, for me personally, there's been some times in my life that I've felt the same exact way. It's like you're always trying to do so much and everything. So, and I may have a tool that could be helpful with you in terms of coping with some of that too. So, maybe
cool.
We'll get into that later. But before we,
yeah, for sure.
But let's get into the next part of this podcast, which is the Q Box round. All right. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the Q Box round is just a series of random questions I prepared for Thomas here, and he's going to give me his quick answer unless he feels that he really has to elaborate on them. Are you ready, Thomas?
Yes.
All right. What's your favorite book?
Oh man, this is gonna annoy. Oh well, it's not. It's just pretentious. I really like the Bible. From a religious perspective, because I am religious. But
Hmm.
dude, like the Book of Genesis and a lot of the books in the Old Testament are so weird. There's so much there, and they
It's funny you
interest me so
said
much.
that because I started reading the Bible recently just for the heck of it, and you are absolutely
Yeah.
right. It's so weird. The old.
Well, here's what makes it so weird, and then we can move on to the next question. And these are shotgun. But what makes it so weird is that you're reading these stories and you're like, I'm bored. This is the weirdest stuff I've ever read in my entire life. None of this makes sense, but for some reason it sticks with you. And then on top of that, it's always been the top selling book.
Yep.
And so it's like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
It's like from an alien race. That's how it feels. It's so strange. So that's my favorite book.
Okay.
And my next game is actually based on Genesis. So anyway,
Sweet. All right. Pineapple or kiwi?
pineapple, kiwis. I don't like the hair.
Okay. What's what's one thing that most people don't know about you?
Um, they think I'm really like sweet and kind on my YouTube channel. Like, oh, Thomas is so humble, but I'm pretty cocky deep down, and I have a short fuse. So yeah.
Man, I just absolutely love the honesty and stuff. That's
I'm trying to be honest because I'm eventually going to be found out, so might as well admit it now.
fair enough.
Yeah.
All right. What is your favorite Saturday morning cartoon? Or was your favorite? Sorry.
Oh man, I didn't really watch that stuff.
Yeah.
Not really. Yeah, I didn't watch that stuff.
Any type of cartoon at all?
I mean, okay, so it's not Saturday morning, but I mean,
That's fine.
Dragon Ball Z.
Okay, that's a good one.
I grew up, yeah, and I'm super into I'm super into fitness now, and like I'm just waiting to become a Super Saiyan, because me and my me and my friends would always try and power up, so we'd stare at each other and we would pulse our muscles and scream just like Goku,
Yep.
and you would feel like this surge of energy, and so ever since that, I've always loved just taking an hour out of my day, working out, and getting that surge of, I guess it's endorphins. So that TV show inspired a big part of my hobby life, which is weightlifting.
That's awesome. You're just Super Saiyan it all the way through. You're not powering
That's
through.
right.
You're Super Saiyan. Sweet.
That's right.
All right. What cereal brand best represents your personality?
Fruity Dino Bites.
Sweet.
Fruity Dino Bites. Fruity Dino Bites because they're cheap, and I think they taste just like Fruity Pebbles. But you get a huge bag. You get
I
like,
know exactly what you're talking about.
oh yeah, you have to haul that onto your shoulder
Yeah.
and carry it out of the store. I love that stuff because I'm actually one of the things that I like to pride myself in is being able to see through the BS of marketing tactics, because I'm a marketer myself, and people are very skeptical of me sometimes when I'm throwing ads on YouTube. Hey, here's how you become a full-time game developer, because I have an online course as well.
Yep.
So I'm totally down with being skeptical of BS marketing tactics, and so I'm sitting here, I'm looking at a box of Fruity Pebbles, and then I'm also looking at Fruity Dino Bites, and I'm like, they're the same. They're both going to give you cancer, so might as well just get the big bag that's cheaper.
Man, I feel like we both have these same strategies, at least because I do a lot of the grocery shopping in the house, and I'm thinking the same thing when I'm in that cereal aisle. Hilarious.
Yeah.
All right, and last but not least, the staple on the show here is, what game are you playing right now?
None. Boy, I'm pretentious. I know I am. I'm not playing anything right now. I usually don't play video games. Because it's my job. It's kind of like I don't know. It's like when something's your job, you just sort of stop doing it. And I know I should play games, but I'm not currently playing anything.
No, and that's fine, because it's funny. Sometimes people ask me the same. It's like, I'm just so busy with stuff. Like, I would like to play games, but either one, just don't have any more mental bandwidth or anything for it, and then two, the kids are taking over the TV anyway.
I know. So I guess the only game I'm playing, dude, is The Kissing Monster, which is a game me and my 3-year-old made up, where she chases me around in a circle, and then I grab her and I kiss her on her forehead. That's. So maybe I don't know. Maybe
it's still a game. It's still
It's still a game.
Yeah. All right. He checked the box, folks. We're good.
There you go. There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much for sharing all that. It was a lot of fun. But now let's get right into the topic here, which what we're going to be talking about today is going full-time dev, because that's kind of what that's definitely what you've done, but it's also like a platform that you share with people and everything else. So I figured it'd be really helpful to like dig in a little bit further and get a better understanding of that. So to kick off the question, this idea of going full-time dev can be rewarding yet very daunting to most people. So what's a good way to approach this so that the concept is less frightening but easier to visualize?
Well, here's a good metaphor. If you were to go to Vegas and gamble away some money, let's say you're going to go out with your buddies. The way you approach that is you go, okay, how much money can I throw away? How much money can I just burn? You don't go to Vegas going, okay, I've got $5,000 in savings. That's all I've got. I'm going to go spend it and make some money. Like, that's a terrible way to do this. The way you should gamble away your money, if you're going to gamble, is to say, well, I could lose $1,000. I've got maybe you got $10,000 in savings. I'm going to lose $1,000. And if I lose it, that's okay. The same needs to be true with how you start your game studio. And I don't know if this frustrates people or it's an overly simplistic way of thinking about it, but you should never jump into a venture as risky as game development, which especially like solo or indie game development is a very risky venture. So you should never jump into it saying, this is going to be my career. I'm going to make $1 million. It's always going to pay off. You need to be willing to not only lose money, and by money, I mean, I guess your time, or maybe you spend a couple grand on getting some help or whatever. But yeah, you need to be willing to lose money, and you need to be willing to lose time, and basically sacrifice it on the altar of, well, maybe it was your childhood dream, and say, I'm going to go for it.
Yeah.
So I mentor some people, and I always tell them that. They're like, okay, when is it going to pay off? When is it going to pay off? And I just say, I don't know. So ultimately, my piece of advice is, if you're not willing to lose some money, if you're not willing to lose some of your time, maybe that's your, Netflix and chill time.
Yep.
If you're not willing to lose that, you shouldn't be doing it. Because I can't promise you're going to go full time. I can tell you what I did to go full time, and what some very, very clear cut, tried and true tactics you can do. So the idea of going full time, it is daunting. And I've had people tell me, how do I get over the fear? How do I get over the fear? And I'm like, you're not really going to get over the fear.
Yeah.
Until you start making some money. So if you're not a person who can't, I guess, walk into a dark room and just all you're thinking about is turning on the light, well, maybe this isn't for you. You've got to be okay with that feeling of, I don't know if this is going to pay off. I can't see my future. I have no idea what this is. And that's okay. And you learn to breathe, and you learn to be okay with the process. So that's the best. So from a mental approach, to answer your question, from a mental approach, the way to become less frightened is to just, here's a metaphor, touch the tarantula, hold the tarantula, let it crawl all over your face, and learn to deal with it. Because there's no other better advice I think I can give. Because the rest of them would just be kind of almost like washed down, artsy fartsy.
Yeah.
What's the word, like what gurus typically say, which is you can get all this money and you can make all this money. It's like, no, I'm going to teach you how to be fearless. That's what I'm going to teach you how to do first.
Yeah. And I very valid point, because here's the reality of that, Thomas just basically outlined, is you provided a very good idea and how to create a proper mindset towards entering something like this, going full time.
Yep.
And let's face it, folks, for game dev, it's no different than anybody else wanting to be an entrepreneur. It's a roller coaster ride. It's there's so many factors of unknown, and yeah, you can put together plans and have goals and everything else, but regardless of all those things, it's still going to be unknown. So I love your approach to that because it's honest, it's sincere, and it's the complete truth. You don't know if you can't like put yourself into some of the scenarios that you outlined, then you might have to reconsider it. But doing that is ultimate. It's always going to be frightening, but it can make the process less frightening because you're learning, as you said, to be comfortable with areas that are most likely uncomfortable.
Yeah, exactly. And just to clarify, when I say put a tarantula on your face, what I'm saying is facing a phobia. Now, if your phobia is, oh, I'm just really scared of getting a $100,000 loan from the bank to go full time, I say, wait, that's not a phobia. That's just logic. Don't do that. Don't do that. What I mean is, most of the time, what people's phobias are is like, it's not a phobia, but like the things that people are scared of is, what are people going to think?
Yep.
What are my parents going to think?
Yep.
Oh, do people think I'm silly? Oh, I don't want to post my first YouTube video, or I don't want to post my first like animated GIF on Twitter. I'm scared.
Yeah.
And I'm saying slowly dip your toes. It's like that What About Bob movie. It's like baby steps. Take baby steps into the dark.
Yeah.
And dude, I was just running through my budget today for my studio, and I'm spending way more money than I thought I was spending to keep this thing running. The ROI is like 2-to-1, so that's good.
Right.
But I'm looking at the numbers, and I'm like, I feel like I am on a ship in the middle of the fog in the ocean. I have no idea where I'm going, but for some reason, it's working.
Yep.
I'm slowly hitting my destination. So you've got to learn to breathe, take it easy, and almost file away your thought. My wife taught me this. She said, Thomas, put all of your little scared thoughts, all of the things that are frightening, put them in a mental folder, close that drawer, lock it up, and let's go get some pizza. Yeah. And you just learn to do that as an entrepreneur. You don't really have to do that you kind of have to do that when you have like a day job, but your boss is handling most of that stuff.
Yep.
You know? And when you're making a game, you are your own boss and you are an entrepreneur, even if you're on it with a team. So you've got to learn to just hate this word, but get a thick skin, toughen up.
Yep.
Because it's a rough road.
All right. So, this is really good because it really leads into another discussion point that I wanted to have with you, which is overcoming challenges. So that was one good example, but can you think of any other types of strategies that can help people overcome, especially when they're facing some initial challenges when they're just starting out on this venture?
Yeah. Money helps a lot. Money helps a lot. So and I hope I'm answering your question properly. People tend to just go, well, I'm not going to make money because I'm not smart. So I'm going to try and scramble to find all these other ways to find solutions. And what you end up doing is you end up burning yourself out because you're doing everything all the time. Yeah. And so what I teach and what I'll teach right now is there are 3 ways to make money before you even finish your game. There's 3 ways to get 6 figures in funding before you go full time. And what that means is all of those challenges, all of those crazy things that you're like, man, I can't do all this. You can actually go, well, I'll pay someone, a freelance fee of $6,000 to handle this stuff so that I don't have to. And so my 3 ways of making money are crowdfunding publishers/investors, and then also slowly building a social media army that will support you. And usually it ends up manifesting as an email list that you can target when you do actually launch your game. It's kind of like a Steam wish list, but it's actually an email list that you're in control of.
Yes.
So again, to recap, crowdfunding, which you can bring in 6 figures that way. Oftentimes with my students, it's like $20,000 so far because, sometimes a campaign doesn't do as well as you would want. But for me, it was six figures
Yep.
for both campaigns. So that will help me go full time. And that helped me not be so scared of all of these things I had to do because I could actually just outsource it. And again, the second funding technique is publishers. They're not as scary as you think, guys. Not every publisher is like straight from the pits of hell. Most publishers are actually pretty great. And then the third one is building a social media army on all platforms and converting that army into hard, solid email addresses that you store as a list, and then you utilize that list to sell your game. And you could even sell alpha access and start making money before you even finish your game. So those are my three ways of making money. And I actually have a webinar people can watch. It's free on my website, fulltimegamedev.com. It's totally free. It's not like gimmicky or anything. And they can just watch that and learn how to make money. Because once you have money, it's so frustrating because money gets such a bad rap. It's like, ooh, you'll talk about money. No, money helps you immensely. It's going to change everything for you. And if you could figure out a way to make money before you finish your game, then, for God's sake, do it.
Yeah, and I want to point a couple things out there too that you mentioned. One, I was asking for some examples with initial challenges, but you notice how Thomas didn't necessarily give those. Do you know why? Because there's going to be any number of countless challenges that you face, or the emotions that you have, and everything else. The point being is looking at the initial. What can help move you forward, and boiling it down to just money and those three steps. And there's others out there too, but these are the ones that Thomas stands true to, has worked for him, has worked for his students as well, and it's just a much better way of visualizing, because at a high level, if you have a quick high level of looking out at these things, and then you start breaking them down, again, it puts things in a perspective where it's probably going to be more motivating. And plus, on the you said with social media or basically a community in your email list building, as that starts getting going, there's another factor that happens outside of the sales aspect, which is really important because, as we identified, money helps you move forward. But also, there's that motivational aspect of people following you and giving you support and encouragement. I mean, I can't think of anything better with getting money from and additional support from a community like that. And
yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you pointed that out, because look, there's dozens of challenges that you're going to come across. And it is definitely countercultural for me to say this. Maybe it's not, I don't know. But most of those challenges can be solved with just money in the bank. And so, look, some challenges can include, well, I don't have enough time to make the models for my game, or, oh man, I'm not a good coder, or well, I don't have it. I don't have an audience. I don't have a press list. So how am I supposed to market my game? Well, all of those things are solved with financing.
Yep.
And so I'm not gonna you could write a book on every single challenge, or you could say, well, should you be handling those personally yourself anyway? Because if you read books like 80-20 Principle, you should be focusing on the 20% that's going to give you 80% of those great results. And so what are the 20% of things that you're really gifted at? And for me, it's like story building, or world building, story, atmosphere, and mood. Basically, like my skill sets that I've come to find out after 15 years, my skill set is I basically am a film director. That's kind of what I'm best at, even from making this my next game. And so what my point is I'm going to focus on that as my 20%. That's what makes 80% of the results for my games.
Yeah.
All of the other stuff, if I can afford it, I'm going to offload it to freelancers and contract workers. And I fully disclose this in all of my videos on YouTube. Felipe's doing the modeling, Hector's doing the sound, AJ's doing the code based. I've also got some other people I'm talking to for help as well. And it's not like I'm sitting here spending hundreds of thousands of dollars for this stuff. It's just like, hey, can you do 5 models for me for the weapons? And then you pay them, a cup like $500 or $2,000 or whatever. And so having a little bit of money can make things so much easier. Now, really quick before I get some people thinking, well, Thomas is just he's giving us a really blanket statement that's not possible. Well, that's why I turn around and say, okay, well, here are the three ways that you can make money. And again, that's Kickstarter, um, or crowdfunding publishers, and then also building that social media army. And that third one is more of a long-term goal as opposed to, a quick pop of cash.
Right. Yep. Exactly. And one thing I want to point out real quick here is what Thomas just outlined, and it's been discussed here on the show before with other guests too. Play to your strengths. Like,
exactly.
Don't try to do everything, especially if you know you're not that good at it, and maybe you want to learn it eventually. But is that the right time to do it now? No.
Right.
Play to your strengths.
Right. Exactly.
Sweet. All right. Well, okay. You earlier you mentioned about just people might being afraid of like putting themselves out there. And let's say we get people that they're sharing screenshots or video clips and all sorts of communities, but they're still not getting much traction. What's a good mindset to have when this happens, and how people can kind of overcome this initial hurdle?
Okay, so just to clarify, the initial hurdle is no matter what platform, whether it's Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, or just building an email list, people are struggling to get getting noticed at all. Is that what your question is?
Yeah, basically. Yep.
Okay. Well, the first tip is to go for the shotgun approach. And the shotgun approach is blast out as much kind of content as possible. It's videos of you talking to a camera. It's screen captures of your game. It's screenshots. Maybe it's quotes. Maybe it's memes, and it's sort of related to your game. And what I would do with the shotgun approach is shotgun on every single platform as much as you can. Now, obviously, this takes time away from your development, so it's really up to you guys to figure out how you're going to spend your time on this. But I recommend posting daily, and I'm not going to sit here and pretend it's not hard. And it's actually so hard for me that I had to hire somebody to do that for me. So I have somebody handling content creation and pumping it out. After about a month or two of pumping out this content, we'll dig into the analytics, see what's working, what's not, and then we'll funnel down slowly again to the 20%.
Yep.
What's that 20% of the content that's working for you? A lot of people though, and this is the second tip. The second tip is, for God's sake, you need to be posting for a year before you ever feel like you're gaining traction.
Yeah. And
it's kind of unfortunate and weird, because I'm sitting here thinking about, well, wouldn't these tech companies want us to be motivated to post immediately? I downloaded this app. I can't remember what it's called. I downloaded this recent app that's supposed to be like a competitor for TikTok, because it's always good. It's always a good idea to get on these platforms early, and you post content or you join and you get nothing. You get no response, and so I do wonder why the tech companies don't motivate new users a little bit more and give them some motivation, give them a few followers, or the algorithm maybe can help them.
I think
I
was just to say, I think TikTok took that strategy, actually, what you're just talking about, because like for new early adapters or whatever, they were rewarding them with basically results and things like that.
Yes. And when you jump on Twitter or YouTube, it's really, really hard to get traction. But I was talking to someone I'm mentoring right now, who's starting a YouTube channel. I said, you need to have, what could I call it? Let's just call it the 2-year mentality. That sounds like a cool word. So the 2-year mentality is, you're not going to get results for 2 years. Like good results, like maybe hit 15 to 40,000 subscribers. It's going to take you 2 years. And this comes back to our Las Vegas, like going and playing slots metaphor. Are you willing to sacrifice that time and that effort? Because you got to be in this for the long haul. I'm of the opinion that if somebody, there are two things that will get anybody anywhere that they want to go. Generally, this is a rule of thumb. This isn't a promise. The first one is fortitude. You consistently post every day for a year. And you get zero likes. But wait, you got one like, and then all of a sudden it was two, and then it's four, and then six. And so that fortitude leads to hopefully exponential growth. So if you're seeing growth, if you're seeing a certain amount of likes, a certain amount of shares, and ultimately for me personally, the end goal is, am I getting people to subscribe to my email list through those posts? If you're seeing that, good for you. So the first one is fortitude, just pushing, and not really giving up, you know.
Yeah.
Because certain people they'll post content and they'll be on their fifth post and they're like, Thomas, I'm not seeing any growth. And I'm like, yeah, well, no, duh. It
Yep.
takes a long time to get where you need to go. And I hate to be so brash, but like that's the way it works. And that, you know, the people who are now, some people who are really successful on social media, they did get lucky. You know, they got on the platform early or whatever.
Right.
Now, the second trait that it takes is humility. Humility is one of the most important. It's a weird one because you would think a lot of these people who are super successful on social media are like a bunch of cocky bastards. But I actually am of the opinion, the more I'm growing in the influencer space, it requires a ton of humility. You need to be willing to take, hey, maybe humility is not a good word. Maybe it's humiliation. You need to be willing to get a lot of hate. You need to be willing to get people saying you're totally wrong. Because the truth is if you're honest, and this is something we should all be doing, if you're really honest in your social media posts, you're probably in the long run going to get a bigger following. But it also means you're probably going to get more dislikes and more hate from people who dislike you. So humility, it works in two ways. The first way is you're willing to be humiliated because you don't see yourself as a god. You see yourself as just a silly person posting content, and that's okay. And if people don't like what I'm posting, no big deal. It's okay. I don't mind being humiliated. But the other aspect of humility that's really important when you're posting on social media is when you post content and it doesn't perform, you don't go, oh, I'm an idiot. I'm not doing this anymore. I hate myself. I thought I was better than this, or I'm embarrassed, or how dare the world not like my content. So instead of thinking that way, you need to be humble and go, of course I don't know what I'm doing. Now, let's look at the analytics and see what I can do better next time. Maybe read some stuff, maybe take an online course about social media and go from there.
Yeah. No, this is like super smart way to approach it and everything else, because you're absolutely right. I think a lot of times people, when they approach things, to put it simply, they take it personally sometimes, and
Yeah.
you really can't. So again, like looking back at to those analytics, and letting like the data kind of support your decisions moving forward is going to be really helpful. But just to point out one more thing that while you were talking there, and it just goes back to our initial kickoff, question and topic. It takes time to do this. And from your analogies that you provided, be ready to keep walking in the dark, like slowly too. Like this whole process, this consistency. And, as you were saying, to build up things so you can create some awareness, it could take 1 to 2 years. And
Yeah.
again, it takes time. So if it's not working now, and perfect example, by the way, it's like nothing. I got a like. It's one more than yesterday, and then you keep moving forward, and now I got my email address, and boom. And you know what? I a couple episodes ago we released our transparency episode and launch of season 2, and we shared that same thing. It started out so small, and it's been going for years now, and we're still slowly growing, but we're still making progress.
Yeah.
Like it's the same with anything.
It is. But I'm also one of those people who I believe there is a time to quit. So one of my metrics for when you should quit is, let's say after a year of posting content and you've only seen static growth, you haven't seen exponential growth.
Good way to.
That's when I go, okay, something's off here. Because technically, or theoretically, that's a better word. Theoretically, you should be seeing exponential growth. You should have 100 subscribers in 2 months. and then 300, and then 700, and then 1500. You should be seeing exponential growth. If you're seeing static growth, it's like, well, is it just because you're just pushing, 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 and people are kind of just barely interested? And maybe it's not that you need to quit with posting content about your game. Maybe it's that you need to tweak the content and fine tune it.
Or even potentially pivot.
Pivot, exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, dude, and I'm in the middle of a pivot right now because like my whole YouTube channel was all about posting dedicated uploads. So like once every 2 weeks, I would post a dedicated upload about game development.
Yeah.
I'm learning that my audience really likes me to just sit and ramble. They just want to hear me sit and ramble during live streams. Like the engagement is great. And so I'm like, wait a second. And so I'm doing a major pivot right now where I'm like, do you guys really want to sit and just watch me ramble while I make games? And I think that's what they want.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to try it out, and it seems to be working. I just got a message from YouTube that says that my engagement is up, or I think it's my engagement or my viewership is up 55% from last month. And that's just because I sit for 3 hours and just ramble and make games. It's very interesting. And I had no idea that this is what I should be doing. But it's about just that guess and check mentality, that shotgun approach.
Yeah. And not only that, when you talk about analytics, here's another way to view it. They're like the analytics, the data to back those decisions. But those decisions, too, it's not just from data. It's also basically, it comes down to you're finding ways to better serve your audience.
Yep. Hey, and that's so important. In the end, you and I and game developers. I hate to say it, but we really need to be serving our customers and providing value to them.
Exactly.
And that's what a Twitch streamer's doing.
Yeah.
A Twitch streamer isn't just some silly person sitting and talking and not actually providing value. Those people, their audience, they show up for a reason every day. They're receiving value from the Twitch streamers. So that's really important to keep in mind. Provide value. You should be providing more value to your customers than you think is fair.
Yeah.
Because ultimately, the people who receive that reciprocity from you, I think that's the word, they'll return the favor when you're ready to launch a game.
Yeah, absolutely. They'll respect you for it.
They will.
All right. Well, I want to ask one more question here before we start closing. And it's relating to, the right time to go, full dev. Now, we kind of covered a lot of that actually already in terms of the things you can be doing, those 3 steps to getting money to fund the project and moving forward. So let's say you're getting money coming in, you're doing all these things fine, but initially taking that leap into full-time dev, once you get there, it can be a really empowering experience and may create what I'm calling here passion override at first, right? You're like, oh, I'm super empowered. I got this going for me. And you go into like full overload on just maybe like tunnel vision, right? So to help prevent this or potential setbacks that could come up with this, what I describe as passion override, what are some things devs should keep a pulse on while focused on making and creating awareness for their game?
It's an interesting question. So clarify for me when you say pulse over or the override thing.
Yeah,
Can you clarify specifically what the problem is there?
So let's say I'm doing this. I'm full time now, and I'm getting tunnel vision, focusing on maybe things that you're getting distracted by working specifically on certain things and not keeping a pulse on your whole business, so to speak. Let's say you're spending money real fast because you have motivation and you're making a lot of progress with things, but you're not necessarily keeping a pulse on the whole entire business. You're looking at the project, not the business.
Yeah. Get married and have kids.
That will definitely help. I agree.
So for those of you who are dating, knock up your girlfriend. No, I'm kidding. But seriously, though, when you've got dependents, you don't have time to dick around. And you don't have time to make all these crazy risky moves where you're super excited. So obviously, not everybody can even wants to have dependents. So obviously I'm joking here. But what's at the root there is when there are stakes, um, when there are stakes associated with your decision to go full-time game dev, you treat it with reverence. It's interesting. There's this if anyone's ever grown up in like the Bible Belt circle, they say to fear the Lord, and it sounds really bad. It's like why would I fear? I thought he was supposed to love me, but I'm supposed to fear him. The same is true with game dev. You should fear game dev. You should fear entrepreneurship. You should look at it with reverence. And if you're in a position where you're not looking at it with reverence, and by reverence, what do I mean? I mean, this thing can kill you, or what's a better way of putting it? If you screw up, you're out of money and you have to start over. And you've just lost a lot of credibility online, especially if you have followers or you have a Kickstarter campaign, or even credibility with your family. So for me, the way that it's a weird balance though, because you definitely don't want to become paranoid and anxious all the time.
Right, exactly.
But you really need to be in a position where the stakes are high. So if you're comfortable and it's like, oh, I have all this money and I have all this funding and it doesn't really matter if my game is successful, like that's cool, but it might lead you to make some crazy decisions. And I'll admit, right now I'm in a financial position where I'm pretty comfortable because things have gone really, really well with Neversong, my previous game. They've also gone really well with my online course. And so I'm sitting here in a financially comfortable place. So what I have to do for myself is I have to give myself goals that are almost mandated by God himself. Like that's the way I think of it. So I go, okay, the goal for the end of 2021 is X, and I have to hit that goal. And then it puts the pressure and the fire back under my butt to do a good job. Feature creep is a big problem, where you're constantly just like, oh man, what if I did this, and what if I did that, and what if I did that? So I say a tangible goal is what's really going to help that. Tangible goals for me include we're going to launch March of 2022. The game is going to make $500,000 minimum within the first 4 months. And these are the types of guns. These are the enemies. We're not going to go beyond that. This is what the game is. This is what a similar game is. So for me, I'm comparing my games to like, let's say a 1/10 of what Half-Life 1 was, and maybe Dusk. I love Dusk, the game Dusk. So I look at certain games and I go, this is my reference point. And essentially I make an oath to myself that I'm not going to go beyond that. Because when I do go beyond that scope, all of a sudden the game turns into a 5-year project. Well, if you're paying yourself a salary of $50,000 a year, you just spent $250,000 on your game. And you're like, wait, is it going to make that back? I have no idea. And so we talked about this earlier in the podcast. You really should be thinking about the money side of things. I was talking to an entrepreneur friend of mine the other day where it's like, there's a weird piece. Strangely enough, there is a weird piece and stability you receive when you become an accountant for a little bit or a bookkeeper. And you go, okay, I'm going to spend some time refocusing on the numbers and how much money I'm putting into this. And again, money is time. Time is money, right? So I always tell my students to say, what's your hourly rate? Okay. I'll figure out how much it's costing you to make this game based on that hourly rate.
Yep.
Then you go, okay, do I really want to make a hook shot gun? Like, do I really want to do that? Or do I want to just stick with what I've got?
Yeah.
And I hope I'm answering your question. I'm not sure.
No, you definitely are. And plus what you just said right there, it's so funny. Like I'll ask that on occasion with some clients and stuff. It's like, so what's your in-kind costs? In-kind costs being, what is your hourly rate that you're putting into this? And if you can't give that, then that means you can't give your overall estimation of what are your costs, how are you going to recoup those costs and things like that. Very straightforward. But yeah, I mean, just overall everything else that you said to like, if you're really getting excited about stuff, a good way to counter that is set goals. And those goals, and by default, in a way, should set limitations too. And as you're moving forward, as it sounds like you've already been doing, is like, okay, here I am. And this is where, feature creep can come or scope creep can come up is, okay, is this going to meet my goal? And if anything doesn't come up as like a absolute yes, then it's a no. Because otherwise, you're not going to keep those tabs on yourself. You're not going to set those limitations and everything else. So I think you said it perfectly. Setting those goals are really important. And then in some cases, probably even future plan. We had an episode in the past about that, but future plan a little bit too, because that's, even though it might be further down, you're still setting goals. You're still setting those limitations so you can reach those areas that you need to.
Exactly. And there is some kind of chemical rush or something when you actually follow through on goals.
Oh yeah.
And on the opposite end of the spectrum there is a degradation of the soul. I can't think of a better way to put it. That happens when you constantly quit things.
Yeah.
So I would just encourage your listeners to finish just let your yeses be yeses and your nos be nos to yourself. So if you maybe promise yourself right now, today I'm going to eat 30 slices of pizza. And just do it and see how you feel. You're probably going to feel really sick, but your soul, something deep down in you is going to say, I did what I said I was going to do.
Yep.
And my personality is, I don't know whether it's my dad's fault, because he's a very like do what you say you're gonna do, and I love that about my dad.
Yeah.
I rarely quit things, and most of the time it was probably worthy of quitting, but it's kind of like investing in the stock market. You don't jump in the stock market for a year. You should jump in the stock market for 30 years. Yeah. And the same is true for not quitting. Every time you quit, you're pulling money out of the stock market when you shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Just even if it's a dumb investment, put your time into that investment, and it will pay off in the long run, because what you're creating is a disciplined personality, and that is a millionaire personality, in my opinion.
Absolutely. And I couldn't have had you close a better myself with that ending statement there. So rightfully so. So stay true to yourself. You put the time and energy into it, stay true as much within the means as possible.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I know we're running up on time here, but before we do, Thomas, first of all, it was great, but what is a good way for people who've listened today that would love to reach out to you, learn more? I know you have, there's a lot of games you have your YouTube channel, you have your courses, which are like super helpful. What are ways people can get in touch with you or find out more information about those things?
Well, if they Google Thomas Brush YouTube, they can follow me on YouTube and just subscribe, hit the notification bell. The reason that I would suggest they do that is because I live stream every day for 4 hours, and I try and talk to my audience while I do it. And so people get to watch me make a game, but they also get to talk to me. And I also do Q&A sessions where I, ramble like I've been doing now. And we do that daily. But if you guys are interested in playing my games, go to atmosgames.com, ATMOS games.com. And if you're interested in learning how I made those games, and not only that, but how I went full-time, secured 6 figures from publishers, and also 6 figures from crowdfunding, and I did that multiple times. If you're interested in learning my secrets, go to fulltimegamedev.com.
All right, awesome. So everyone, at the very least, please check out Thomas's channel. It's very informative. All the content, up to date, is just so helpful. So again, go out there, check it out, and obviously check out the other things too. You'd be pleasantly surprised if you're not already. So, Thomas, can't thank you enough. Really appreciate you being on the show today.
Yeah, no problem, Andrew. It was really fun.
Hey everyone, thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. If you enjoy and value the show's content, you can support us even more by going to Patreon and visiting www.patreon.com/IGM podcast and select the tier that best suits your needs. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.